Okay, man, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. Now, come on, now crank this motherfucker up.
Break it down like this.
Hello, Internet. Gino, that Guino Grandpa here again with another episode of Deep Listens. And today we are going to be discussing Trek to Yomi, a Akira Kurosawa-esque samurai action game. And joining me, as always, to discuss all things video games, Pete Busby. How you doing, Pete?
Hey, I picked this one for better or for worse. We'll find out which one in about, I don't know, let's call it 5 minutes. This week's fun fact, I don't know if I've used this one before, so please stop me if I have. But this is a simple one that I got to say at work this week, so I wanted to say it again. Have I ever mentioned the Latin word for grape? Or excuse me, for raisin?
No.
Take that as no.
No.
Okay.
I don't think it's come up
Yeah,
in
it probably
conversation.
But in Latin, like the Latin word for raisin is uva passa, which translates literally to a grape that has suffered.
Oh, this grape has seen something.
Oh,
Yep, and now it's a raisin.
that's why it's all shriveled up. It got
I was going to get
scared.
uva. I'm feeling pretty good that I would have gotten that part.
Isn't uva
That's
like
ova.
egg?
That's ova, yeah. I think that would be Greek, though.
Whatever. That other voice you heard is the mistress of games, M. Palladino. How you doing, M?
Hello. I don't know if you guys know this, but I love samurai shit, so I was very excited to play this game. Well, I sure played it.
And hopefully, if you're hearing Pete now, sounds better, because we found out that the recording software we're using thinks that his voice just is background noise.
Yep.
Which was an interesting thing to find out.
Some sort of whale noises coming in from the background.
I assume that Discord just like trains its noise gate on 14-year-old boy voices, and a baritone just overwhelmed it in a way that they weren't prepared for.
It overwhelmed many people in ways they're not prepared for.
All right. Well, if you wanted to hear more of Pete's dulcet baritone, you could support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens at the OG Soncast tier, which is our new $3 tier, which gets you access to the new podcast. That's what, by the time this comes out, the first paid episode will be up. So get in there, do that. That would be cool.
Did you explain anything about what we're offering?
First off, we have our Patreon, patreon.com/deeplistens. At the $1 tier, you get access to our Discord. At the $3 tier, you get access to the Discord and access to the OG Soncast, which is a podcast about anime, mostly, that came out in the 90s and early 2000s, maybe even earlier, because we're old. And
Yes.
if you don't know what OG-san means, it means basically uncle in Japanese. And if you're older than 18, you're an OG-san as far as anime is concerned. So despite the fact that we are both young and hip, we are old enough to be OG-sans. And so, Pete, how did your most recent one go?
Last one was good. We did Ergo Proxy, which we thought was ambitious but flawed. It's probably the nicest way to put it. And our next one is going to be Berserk. So a hard left turn into a hardcore anime action.
That's quite a jump.
Completely unrelated.
Nice. And I didn't do our regular plugs because I jumped straight into that great transition. You can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens@libsyn.com. We have our comment sections and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. That is our email address if you wanted to send us any sort of questions or stuff. So now that we've mentioned the Patreon and how you can support it, and just FYI, like I'm counting the folks who are in the OG Soncast tier as 2 people for the purposes of whether we have to play the next game in our punishment series. So if you wanted to both make us more likely to play Mass Effect Andromeda and get that podcast, please do so. But in any case, if you support at any level, you would get access to the Discord, which might put you on the Discord report.
The Discord report. Boop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop. This week on the Discord, we had a pretty heated discussion about our Monster Hunter podcast, where some comments may have been taken out of
You don't say.
context. Yeah, maybe a little overblown. People who don't listen to our show commenting on stuff that we covered in the
so
show.
long talking about whether Monster Hunter. At the end, it was at the very end. I was like, this game makes me feel kind of icky because I'm kind of at my heart, I like animals a whole lot, and this is about poaching, isn't it? And that discussion was 10 minutes of an hour and a half long show, something like that. And it was the very end of it.
Yeah.
It was the very end of it.
I think we can say whatever we want about the people who commented
they don't listen,
on it,
apparently,
because we've confirmed that they don't listen to the show.
And they're pro poaching, which we don't support on this podcast.
I don't know why ZP.
So I
don't know why
ZP
and Brayden are both pro poaching. They just, I guess, they like to see the light leave the eyes of little seals. But that's for them to deal with. That's between them and their god. But so that happened on the Discord. Anything else? The football, lots of football discussion. We've had some watch-alongs on some football games. Our first week 1 of the NFL happened, so we did a couple of watch-alongs there. That was fun. In the Discord, we are outlining which games are getting watched which weeks, etc. So be ready for watch-alongs on Sundays or Thursdays or Mondays, because the NFL has taken over the whole week.
Whatever.
I did not know there was going to be a new kickoff until I tuned into the highlights of the very first game, and I was like, "This looks different."
Once they were like, "Well, the ball must land in the landing zone." I was like, "What? Excuse me?"
Why?
So, the reason why
injuries and excitement.
Yeah. So kickoffs are maybe the single most dangerous play in football because you are running 30, 40 yards at a dead sprint into people who are generally stationary trying to block you. So, people just get obliterated every kickoff, most likely. The best possible outcome in a kickoff is it goes out the back of the end zone and people just sprinted for no reason. Now they moved the ball closer, and they made it so that you're trying to aim short of the end zone so that people have to return it, but no one gets to run until the ball is touched. So instead of getting a running start at the guy with the ball, you're all just starting from basically stopped.
Okay, I guess that
instead
makes
of
sense.
People at 20 miles an hour colliding or 15 miles an hour colliding, it's 7, 8, 9.
They're just getting
0.
going. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It seems like there's probably going to be fewer kickoffs returned for touchdowns, but there will probably also be fewer people having their careers ended. So I think that's a fine trade-off.
Works for me.
I think those were the big things. Oh, one other thing that came up in the Discord. This is gaming news. Annapurna Interactive, the publisher, essentially dead.
Yes. Yep.
Wow.
They lost every staff member. Everyone quit.
Can someone remind me of something they have made that I would remember?
The Artistic Escape was them. If you're Artful Escape, the Artful Escape. Remember from a few years ago.
Yes.
We've played a lot of them. Outer Wilds. Neon White.
Neon White.
Okay.
Our most recent.
Wow. We have played a bunch of these.
They did What Remains of Edith
That was another
Finch.
one we played.
We've played a lot of these. This might be one of our most popular jokes.
They are one of the more prolific publishers. We haven't played Thirsty Suitors, but I feel like at some point you're going to pick that, M. What?
Motherfucker. I was... Nope. Well, now I gotta
was that what you were gonna
else.
pick? Did I get you just by looking?
Fucking spoilers. It was topical.
You still can. You still can.
Do
you
it
still
anyway.
can. It's fine. You could have just
you.
been like, yeah, sure. It would be weird if I picked that. Oh, some other ones. Journey, Gone
it would be
Home,
crazy.
Gorogoa.
Oh, yeah. They make a lot of games that make our
Yeah.
yearly
So what
roundup.
happened, it seems, is that the employees wanted to spin off into a separate company because Annapurna is also a movie publishing firm, and I guess it's, some rich person's like side hustle or like passion project, and so they wanted to be like a real company, and they were like, let us spin off, and the owner was like, no thank you, and so they all quit en masse to start their own company.
It was founded by Larry Ellison's daughter.
Yes.
It's
So
weird.
we'll see. On the one hand, all power to them by saying, hey, we want this to happen, and we're going to make it happen whether we have the approval of our manager or not, or the boss or not. On the other hand, man, they published a lot of good stuff, and they seem to have a lot of blank checks. They published a lot of games that seemed like they were not very good,
Wow,
successful.
Kentucky Route Zero too.
Oh, right, Kentucky Route Zero also.
Oh yeah, Kentucky Route Zero. Yeah. So rest in peace, or we'll see you later, depending on what happens, I guess. They're probably gonna spin off into another
Hopefully.
company,
I just
I'd
hope that they
assume.
don't. I hope that the Larry Ellison purse was not part of what allowed things to work. I hope that it was the capability.
Mhm.
I hope it wasn't the fusion of a very capable publishing team and Larry Ellison's checkbook. Because if it was those two things, that's going to be hard to recreate. If it was mostly the expertise and actually Larry Ellison's daughter was getting in the way, maybe it'll be even better. But we'll find out. It's going to be a change regardless. But yeah, that's a power move you don't see very often. Just the whole company just being like, peace. So good for them.
Yep.
Hopefully it works out. All right. Now let's turn our attention to Trek to Yomi, the game of the week. Pete, you picked it. What is this thing?
Trek to Yomi. So Trek to Yomi is a samurai game. You play a samurai, and basically what happens at the very beginning, slight spoilers, but it happens early. Bandits attack your village and more or less burn it down and kill everybody. And then you have to go on a journey of maybe vengeance, maybe love, definitely self-discovery, and fight your way through a whole bunch of oh various samurais, some monsters, some spirity sort of things, as you journey through Yomi, which in a gross simplification is sort of Shinto afterlife. It's it's not like hell, but it's where people go after they die, more or less.
Yeah, so the game starts with the main character, Hiroki, as a child, a samurai in training. His town gets attacked by bandits. His sensei goes and defends the town from the bandits, but in the process is killed. And then you kind of follow Hiroki's journey from there. First off, I think we should start with the thing that's most striking about this game, the look. How would you describe this game's appearance?
Okay, so black and white, high contrast. It is very much a like straight out of a Kurosawa film, and it's got the static camera, so every scene is basically like a little diorama that you are running through. And in later levels, it starts doing some wild stuff. Like things are collapsing and being built up, and uh, they get wild in the afterlife. So it's very visually striking. The aesthetic is
The
mwah.
scientific term is mwah.
You give it a chef kiss. One of the best features
I'd
of
say
it,
the most
I would say.
analogous game visually is probably God of War. Like the early God of Wars is what it's going for. Like PS2 era God of War. Like it is a controlled camera, fixed camera. It is very authorial. Like it is only showing you exactly what they want you to see, exactly how they want you to see it. It's pulling back dynamically as you're moving in dynamically sometimes. Sometimes it's just cutting, hard cut to a new framing as you like step off camera in one direction. And like you said, the high contrast of light and dark really does a lot of work. Like anytime you go inside of a building, it tends to be pretty darn dark, except for one light source. There's some spots where you're just dealing with straight up silhouetting, where you're fighting, samurai on a backlit environment. So it's just basically shadows fighting in front of a white background. Like really good attention to detail with the camera work, and the different light sources too, I think give pretty different character, like between fire versus kind of lightning bugs, or the sun when it's the few daylit scenes that are in the game. They do a lot of good work with this stuff.
If I can use a technical term that I'm probably going to use incorrectly, I think it like the contrast between light and dark
Please.
would be chiaroscuro in photography. So I'm going to throw that out there. If you know more about photography, please correct me. Hey,
I do.
perfect.
You're correct. It's if you've played
Yes.
Limbo,
Yeah.
it's kind of like that. Although not a
So sometimes
2D
2D.
thing.
Sometimes snaps to 2D,
Sometimes.
but it is imagine Limbo's sense of light and shadow combined with like a God of War set of framing and world building, and in some cases scale. But again, PS2 God of War, not God of War 3, not PS3 or PS4 God of War. Like the scope is still, you're not crawling on giant monsters or anything. You're, sometimes you've got environments that are pretty big, but you're never like a little, pea crawling on some large thing. Usually it's mid, I would say like mid frame. You can always tell Hiroki.
I think it would be kind of sick.
It would
if
be,
you were,
but this
though.
game is still like it's a downloadable title. It's an indie game. They didn't go that big on the scale. So the combat, I feel, is the next thing that jumps out at you. M, how would you describe the combat?
So you are a samurai and you have a sword.
Sick.
That's it. You are doing slashes. You're also putting your sword up to block. You also get like a little throwing knives and a bow and arrows and a
gun.
Shotgun at one point. Yeah, don't mind that one. It's all appropriate for 19th
Look, it's a
century
muzzle loader.
Japan.
It's not, it's not the sickest gun.
Yeah, that's why it's limited ammo. Yeah, so there's, I would say, a lot of ways to attack stuff, but we all know you're just going to be hitting like heavy attack every time.
So yeah, I would say there's a light attack, there's a heavy attack, and there's a block. And then the different moves you get are, light, light, heavy. Light, pause, light, light, heavy. Light, up, light, down, light, heavy. There's a bunch of combos you can do, technically. And some of them will result in staggers. Some of them will put your opponent into a stun, and you can finish them with a finishing move that restores your HP because you cut their head off or whatever. Some enemies are armored, so you want to use stabbing attacks. But really, this is a game where your enemy's going to do a big old wind-up, and you're going to hit the block button at the right time, and they will be parried, at which point they are completely vulnerable. And you do whatever the best combo is you memorized.
In its ideal construction, I think this game wanted to be like Arkham Asylum. Like in the same way that like you have some set enemies, you have certain patterns that work for those set enemies, and you need to like rhythmically input your inputs at the right cadence. Like that's this game's combat in the ideal scenario. But then more like Gino said, most of the time it was hit parry, slash, slash, slash. Hit parry, slash, slash, slash.
Yeah, because you can't, most enemies will only let you hit them for one combo string after you parry them. So if you don't do the combo, you're just not going to get as much damage. Whatever combo does the most damage, the enemies are they're very kind. They come at you one at a time.
Yeah.
Sometimes there'll be one in front of you. Sometimes there will be one behind you. But even if you're pincer attacked, the one behind you will not attack you. Or like only one will swing at a time. You're never going to be attacked from both sides at the same time. Or very rarely. Very, very rarely. So there are special moves for like pivoting. There's a button for pivoting to face the other direction. I rarely had to use that unless I wanted to do like the the backswing attack for Hiroki, I found faster and like fast enough that I could actually tag someone with it without having to parry. But that was kind of it. I wasn't like, oh man, I have to parry the person in front of me, then swing around and attack the person behind me, and then come back to the person in front. Never did that happen. I don't know if it happened for either of you.
I
I
don't
would say
think so.
you can style on people. Like the game gives you the option
Yeah.
to like live your samurai fantasy if you want to. You know,
Yeah.
be the master of the blade. But it is from a gameplay perspective purely optional.
If you want to stun on them, you can, but
No.
you don't have to.
What the game boiled down to for me, and I don't know if it was both of you as well, it was literally just wait for the giant wind-up attack, parry it, get as many hits in as I could, backpedal, step back forward again, let them do it. And you've got like a stamina meter that can run out or go down, but I found outside of very specific fights, it just never happened. Like my stamina almost never ran out.
Yeah. Yeah, you're getting stamina upgrades throughout the game too, so I don't think the expenditure is actually getting any greater as time goes on. So you could just do your combos and not have to worry about it.
Yeah, the only exception to the loop you just described, Gino, is basically when you're facing a ranged opponent and you need to, Dead Souls barrel roll through some arrows.
Yeah. You run up on them, and then they're like, oh no, you have a sword and I have a bow. Crap, and then they're dead, is usually how that goes.
Pete, what kind of roll was it?
Some sort of Dead Souls thing. Did I use the term correctly? Dark Souls?
Dark
I thought
Souls.
there were like two of them. What's Dead Souls? Am I just making stuff up now?
There's Dead Cells, which we also played, which is an
Yeah,
indie
that
game
one
that's
too.
like that.
All those rolls. An Elden Ring roll.
Oh, an
An
Elden
Elden
Roll.
Ring. Do the Elden Ring.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you only have to do that occasionally, and you can use projectiles. You get a shuriken, that basically is the equivalent of a light attack hit. You get arrows, which are basically the equivalent of a heavy attack hit, and you get a gun, which when you shoot someone, they mostly just die if they're a normal enemy. If you shoot them with a gun,
Just like a real gun.
use the gun.
So actually the better sequence is to just back up, shoot, parry, shoot, and then you win. Maybe you slash a couple of times. Just shoot them. You
Just like
can
the
cycle through
samurai of
your
old.
Look, the best,
Yeah.
the samurai that ultimately won were the ones who decided to use the guns. We romanticize the
Mhm.
samurais that didn't have the guns, but you know,
We romanticize them because they were out dying honorably against the
Yes.
guns.
Led by Tom Cruise, the greatest samurai of all
Yeah.
time.
yeah. So I feel like in this,
Hmm.
I have two problems with this game's combat. Well, two big
Only
ones, two
two?
main categories.
None less.
One, there's too much of it. There's just simply too many
Yes.
enemies, and they are related. One, there's too much of it. You're fighting so many people over the course of the game that at a certain point, if you've mowed down 100 random samurai, like Kurosawa movies, at least to my understanding, were not about a single Ronin just like plowing through hundreds of people namelessly, right?
No.
The samurai duel, fighting one person one-on-one, is supposed to be epic unto itself. When you're dealing in scale like this, it means that the weight of the life that you're taking and the life that you're risking is basically zero. So all the tension's gone.
I will say, Gino, yeah, I think you're right. I think you're spot on for the game at least. If we're talking about like Seven Samurai as the archetypal Kurosawa film, there
Mhm.
are a whole bunch of just like nameless bandits that get killed. But that whole thing is all about like strategy and preparing the village and like fighting intelligently. It's not just like hack and slash through all these
Yeah.
goons.
Yeah, it's not one dude plowing through goons.
No, definitely not.
Let's change the criteria. Yojimbo seems a
That's
bit more
yeah.
plowing through
But
dudes.
that's
Depending on
Yojimbo,
which
yeah,
one
it's
you
definitely
want.
more time through dudes. But that's not like how do I want to say
Yeah.
it's different? It's sort of like again, it's in like service of this broader plan. Like he's trying to basically enact this like
Mhm.
political machination of turning these two groups against each other. It's not like John Wick style, like look at how badass Yojimbo is. Although he is very badass.
That would be a sick remake, though.
But that's one problem. It's just like the amount of combat. Like at a certain point, you're fighting the same enemies over and over and over again, and you're fighting so many of them that it gets pretty tedious. And also, like when you have to, in a samurai duel, hit a bandit 10 times, it doesn't feel good, right? Like if you're going to throw waves at me and you're going to make it, a samurai battle, it should be probably one hit kills Bushido Blade style most of the time, right?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That's my whole thing about this game. I want to play on the highest difficulty in these sorts of games. Like when I was playing Ghost of Tsushima, I started on the Kurosawa mode, which makes everything black and white. So I already had this game experience, and I played it in the basically the highest difficulty, which is you get hit once and you're dead. And that's what I wanted here, but that is locked behind clearing the game at least once. And who's got time for playing a
But
game
do
twice these
enemies have
days?
the same amount of squishiness?
I think so. I think it's I don't know. I haven't played it on
That's
that mode,
interesting. If it's
but I would like
one
to.
hit kills both ways, I would be cool with that. If they are still, blade
Yeah.
sponges and you are made of paper, that would be pretty
Mhm.
annoying. It's already annoying. Like you have to 2-slash people just running at you with no armor on. And eventually, the guys with armor, depending on which moves you use, if you don't put them into a stun state,
Like 8.
8 or 9, it's a while you can hit them. And
Yeah.
if you're just using like a running attack, for some reason that doesn't deal as much damage as
Mhm.
like a normal attack somehow. So like it's just a lot of logistics for a game that at least originally seems to be going for verisimilitude. It's trying to be believable. It is trying to be grounded. And eventually that goes away, but at least early on I was like, okay, this is man, there's just the sound of wailing children and women and wounded
Yeah.
men all the time, trying to emphasize there are stakes here. And then the stakes of every battle are almost nothing.
Mhm. Yeah. Do you think it would improve the experience if you were having these very cerebral standoffs with every enemy you come across, where it's like I just have to hit you once, but if you hit me once, so we're just gonna do this back and forth. I advance and then you back off, and then you advance and I back off until we come to that epic clash. Do you think it would work better? Or do you think there are still way too many enemies to be doing that for
Oh yeah.
whatever?
You go first, Pete.
They would definitely have to cut down the enemies. And I don't think I would like it just because
Absolutely.
I don't really like fighting games much. That's a personal thing. I think at the very
That's fair.
least, like playing this game, I thought to myself a lot, I wish there were more diversity of parries. Like if I had like parry low, parry the thrust, parry high, like whatever. And I think that is like getting towards what you're talking about, Em. So I feel like we were on the same page. Just you might wanted it to go even a bit further than I did.
Yeah. My take is you would probably reduce the count of enemies, which I think would be to the game's benefit.
Mhm.
And also, at least then it
Yep.
would be a simple but tense game. Whereas how it is right now,
Mhm.
it's just parry and then do your best combo. Like it's very repetitive. It echoes a lot of other action games, but not favorably. And so I would rather try to get myself into a different genre of combat rather than remind, similar to like our discussion with Monster Hunter, right? Like when y'all were talking about how you use the dual blades, and I was like, this just reminded me of other action games, but felt slow because this is, it wants to be something else. This
Yep.
game felt a lot like its look, its feel, like the style of combat it was evoking made me feel like it wanted to be a fighting game or something higher stakes like Bushido
Mhm.
Blade, which is a fighting game. If you haven't played it, it is a fighting game between samurai where if you get an unblocked hit, it will one hit kill your opponent if you do the right attack in the right way. So
Yep.
it felt like that was kind of the visual language they were going for, and even some of the attack like animations they were going for. But ultimately, it was a mash it out God of War game where you just kind of had to parry first. Instead of just starting with the mashing, you had to hit the parry button, and then once your combo opener was hit, you could just wail on them.
Here's a follow-up question. Do you think they wanted to make something more like Bushido Blade, and then they got talked down to like, oh, people don't like it when they get one hit, and so you need to make it so enemies have health bars and shit like that? Or do you think they were like not consciously taking that into consideration?
Well,
I don't know what the
unless there's an
answer is to
interview, we'll
this.
never know.
Yeah, I'm speculating because I'm like fascinated with how it got to this point.
Maybe. So, in favor of your hypothesis, one thing that I would point out, and this is in the game's favor, is just how pretty a lot of the combos look.
Mm-hmm.
Like we said, like you
Mm,
can live the art of the sword if you want to. And they also have these very cool sort of like line drawings in the tutorial menu, which I very much
mhm.
enjoyed. But like, so they obviously put through a lot of effort, a lot of time into making these combos look and sort of play fluid. But the value in like getting one of those kick-ass combos is just so low gameplay wise. Like that
Right.
artistry is not wasted, but definitely diminished.
Yeah, I got to 3/4 of the game basically just using parry, light attack, light attack. There were enemies that it seemed like needed to take heavy attack, so I'd occasionally hit heavy attack, but that was kind of it. Like I got most of the way through the game never engaging with the combo system, which is fine.
Yep.
It's just it made this game even more repetitive. So, should we talk about the enemy variety or lack thereof, or should we go to the story to explain
Nope.
some of the later enemies?
Let's very quickly mention what the
Nameless
enemy types
bandits.
are.
Guys with swords.
Bandits,
With,
sometimes they have armor. Those guys are more
a couple of
armored,
them have
literally.
spears.
They have more health. Yes, they can hit from farther away.
Guys with arrows or guns.
Arrows.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then there's like malformed disease men who play the same as men with swords.
Mhm.
But they don't care about light
Yep.
attacks. They run straight through light attacks. They don't even care.
Yep. And then there are ghosts
Ooh.
who are still just guys
But
with
they're
Some of
ghostly
them
swords.
can throw their swords. Yeah.
And some of them can
Oh, that's
teleport.
true.
And some of them summon
Right.
more ghosts if you don't kill them fast.
I can only remember one sequence when there is guys on horses.
Yeah,
True, I
and you don't
forgot
need
about
to
guys
kill
with
them.
horses. No, you just parry.
Yeah, you just have to block them, which is could have done more with those
Oh
guys.
wait, there is one.
Oh, go ahead.
There's one mini boss.
Yes.
It's very big lady with two
Mm.
swords.
That's
Ah,
true.
yes.
And there's an Oni. There are bosses that have some uniqueness to them, and there's some like people in full on armor. They just get better combo strings, but at the end of the day, if you parry them and then you get to wail on them, it doesn't really matter what they look like or what they do, because they become wildly vulnerable when you parry them. And the parry window is very generous in this game, at least on its default difficulty. So yeah, and you probably fight 200 to 300 enemies over the course of what is a 4 to 5 hour game. So yeah, you have to really like it. I found that it really wore on me over time, the combat. Like I just was pretty done.
It's just a little too active to like zone out for, but it's not as interesting as like action games where you are just wailing on stuff. This is not a Devil May Cry where you're comboing and juggling stuff in the air.
It didn't know whether it wanted to be a Bushido Blade or a Bayonetta, and unfortunately it kind of ended up in the middle, and I don't think it did it any favors. So
Middle wasn't a good place to be.
going now to the story, because I mean it's here. There's not much to like. I think a lot of this game is told via the aesthetic. and the settings you're running through. There's not much dialogue that matters. But you start as Hiroki as a kid. Your town is raided by bandits. Your sensei gets killed. You, what do you do to the lead bandit, Pete?
Cut off his nose. Young Hiroki's a real dick.
Yeah, he wins the duel with a grown man by cutting off his nose. But his sensei gets killed. And it looks like they trade. They do the classic. Both swing at the same time. Bandit falls, and then it's like, oh, the sensei won, but then he falls too. And then the sensei tells you, okay, watch after my daughter. You're in charge of the village now. You need to keep everyone safe. Smash cut to 5-6 years later. A few years later, he's a grown man now.
More, yeah.
Hiroki's grown. He's got a sick hat. He's in charge of the village's samurai. And what happens then?
Okay, so the bandits are going to attack a neighboring village, and if they do that, then they're gonna come over here and attack your village. So you gotta go over there and help your friends. So you go and travel through some mountains for a bit, and then you find out it's a ruse.
But after you run through the village and everyone is wailing and crying and on fire.
Yes. We have to see all these villages on fire. There's going to be like 3 or 4 villages on fire sequences, basically back to back.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what happens.
Yeah, that's what
Japan
happens when you build all of your buildings out of
1800s.
wood, unfortunately.
Yep.
Turns out it's a trick. You head back to your village. Whatever they did to the other village, they did twice as hard to your village.
Yeah. Also, all your friends die.
Yes. All the other samurai get killed. Yeah, shot with arrows. They get tied up and then shot with arrows. Real dick move by the bandit leader. Your village is super duper messed up. You fight your way through it. Your girlfriend boss is dead, and it turns out that the guy whose nose you cut off, he wasn't dead.
Yeah, No Nose Johnson comes back for his revenge.
And you fight him in a duel. You can win that duel, but it's hard. If you win the duel, the game ends there. And I honestly think the game would be better if it ended right there. But if you lose to him, you then go through a protracted sequence where you descend into Yomi, the Japanese afterlife. Yep.
Wait. Before we get into the next part, does it just roll credits? Like if you in there? Does it just like go right into it?
You want to describe it?
Yeah, I'll preface this. I watched it on YouTube. I cheated. You wander out like outside the village. You find your dead girlfriend / boss, and then she does a voiceover saying basically like, "I'll wait for you forever in the underworld," and you wander off forlornly, sort of Incredible Hulk style. Like you're just going to wander the earth until you die and join your beloved in Yomi.
Yeah, she's like, I'm sorry your life will be lonely, and you like drop the sword. And honestly, that would have been a pretty good ending, right? Like,
yeah, interesting.
Could you imagine if we didn't look up anything about this game, we played through, and then we got to that and we beat the guy on the first try, and we were just like, and then we were like, that was. I wonder why it was called
I guess
that.
you sent him to Yomi by killing him. So,
welcome to hell,
what
idiot.
a tight hour and a half, 2-hour game.
That's a pretty solid experience.
Didn't wear out its welcome.
I loved the way it looked. It was really grounded. Like, they really make you feel that these villages are being burned down. You talk to the villagers. They're all sad about their loved ones being killed. Wow. But no, if you lose that duel, you go to Yomi. At first, would you say it's basically you're wandering through Blight Town from Dark Souls, basically?
Yes. Yeah, it's all of the people are like, they call them the tainted, I think. And they're like looking kind of gross and they seem sick, but they don't like you because you were alive and they don't like that.
And you don't.
Yep. So you fight them. It's fine. They're just more enemies.
I will say one aesthetic choice, like there's a bunch of what appear to be baskets or cocoons. And whenever you
Oh,
get
yeah.
near one,
Mm.
horrible spider arms and a human body emerge from them. You can cut those down, but they can attack you. That was cool. That was a really good design. I loved the look of those things.
They were gross, definitely.
But other than
Mhm.
that, you're just fighting dudes with swords and killing the hell out of
Yeah.
them. It's like it's a swamp
Yep.
level, like everything's decaying and falling apart.
Yeah.
And you're chasing after the
Mhm.
ghost of Aiko, your beloved.
And then she
Mhm.
descends into the swamp, and Tall Blade Lady emerges, and you kill Tall Blade Lady, and you're like, "Dear God, I've killed Aiko," and then she's like, "No, you gave me rest." And you're
Yeah.
like, "Cool." And then you keep walking through Yomi.
And the whole game, we haven't said, it's all in Japanese with subtitles, at least by default.
Good voice acting.
Yeah, and what Aiko is
Yeah.
shouting at you in Japanese while she's trying to stab you a lot is, "You let me die, you let Aiko die, like, this is your fault," basically. And I didn't see
Yeah, it's
subtitles
like
for
the
that
game.
one. No, it's
Is
not
it
his fault,
though?
but, he swore to be by her side, and so he should have died by her side instead of going to take care of this other village that would have maybe protected his village. But, the game posits that he's very guilty about this.
Yeah, the whole setup is sort of like you failed in your duty, and now you feel guilty, such that like the game's asking basically like, will you fulfill this ultimate duty you had in some way, or will you be corrupted by love, vengeance, some other thing?
It's like love,
Vengeance.
duty, or hatred.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you
I don't know if those are the be all end
They're also not
all.
really like
You
mutually
could do other
exclusive.
things.
Like you could
Yeah.
fulfill your duty by wreaking horrible vengeance on No Nose Johnson, which to be clear isn't his actual name. Before we get
What
anything
is
else.
that guy's name?
It's a K name.
Kaguro.
Kagura.
Kaguro
Goro, yes.
is his name.
Isn't that the guy
Oh,
from
that's
Yu Yu
Toguro with
Hakusho?
a
That's
T.
Toguro.
Is Yu Yu
The
Hakusho.
Toguro
Oh,
brothers.
you're right.
Yes.
But yeah, after you defeat Aiko's ghost or whatever, you then enter into the most God of War-esque location. It's like fully Yomi. You've accepted that you're in Yomi now. You're not in like the interstitial space anymore. And now physics are weird. Like, you start running on pathways that assemble under your feet. There's puzzles, but the puzzles are mostly look at kanji and then put them onto a dial in the correct order.
Yeah.
Do you see kanji in the environment? Put those into these
Yeah, and most of the
dials.
kanjis are, they're real basic.
Yeah.
Like
I think I saw fire in there
Do
somewhere.
the puzzles actually mean anything if you like compare the
very
words
first
to each
one,
other?
the very first puzzle was
Yeah.
the kanji for down, the kanji for fire, and then the kanji for heaven. And that was the order. Like down was the lowest one, then fire was the middle, then heaven was the top. I was like, okay, I see what you're going for here, I think. And then it just got a little bit more like, here's the kanji for river, here's the kanji for wood. And I was like, okay, are we just doing basic ass kanjis? Is that what's happening?
Yeah. We're playing Learn Japanese, except they don't define any of
No,
these, I don't
I
think.
bet.
No, they just toss them up
Look,
there.
maybe there's a compound word there that I don't know if you just put all those kanjis together, but it seemed to me like they were just going for, here's some kanji. But then you're basically just continuing through Yomi, right? You're fighting more ghosts. This is where the ghosts show up. The ghosts are the people you've killed, so you're killing them a second time, which is kind of funny, I guess. They're all mad at you.
I wonder if it's 1-to-1 like enemies in the first couple of acts compared to
Oh.
these enemies.
I don't think it is.
It can't be. There'd be too many in the second half.
Yeah,
Yeah. You spend more time in Yomi than you do outside.
There's
of Yomi.
also way too few complete mooks. They're all like mid-tier
Right.
samurai or bandits, not the low-tier bandits. But they do hit you with like, you're the first man I ever killed, and then you kill him again.
Yeah, not a lot of reflection. You're just like, well,
No.
double up.
You fight your way through. You fight your sensei. He's been turned into an oni. you beat him, and then he turns into a normal ghost again, and he's like, do you want to do love or duty or vengeance? And you get to pick again, and then you keep fighting your way through.
You know what it reminded me of?
What?
When we had to pick between like love and duty, I was like, you know what this reminds me of? One of the best games ever, Sonic. When I had to choose between Amy and a human woman.
I thought you were gonna say where you're choosing between, was it Shadow, where the
Oh, yeah.
branches go off and like evil and
Oh,
good,
right,
and
right.
This
it's one of
time,
those. No, there are no
if you pick the
branching
right
paths
thing,
here.
it's you and Vector the crocodile fighting against Dr. Robotnik. But if you pick the other
Oh.
one, it's you and Rouge the Bat fighting against an alien.
hmm Could you imagine if Vector the crocodile was just in the
Scroll.
black and white? We don't have to entertain that thought. That just
Modding
occurred to me.
community. You can be the person who does this.
Vector walks up. I live the life of Bushido.
I feel like the modding community could save this one in many ways.
Look, we all know that Vector the crocodile loves two things: sweet tunes and the life of Bushido. These are his two defining traits.
And
Mhm.
Bushido.
Oh man, now I just want him standing in the background, just like in those endings, just there.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Yep.
Just nodding
Mhm,
solemnly.
mhm.
You sure you want to pick revenge? That sounds pretty dark. But yeah, you keep fighting your way through. There's more and more Yomi. It was too long. I got the bit very early on, and the enemies at this area are not that much harder. They're just more annoying because they teleport around and they throw stuff at you. And if you don't kill them, sometimes they summon more dudes. So the stakes aren't that much higher. They're just more annoying. And it ends with you having to make a choice. How would you describe this
Oh
choice?
man. Oh. Okay, so you know in Mass Effect 3, that ending that
Yes.
everyone loved, where a ghost child appears and then is like, all right, you've made all these choices up until now, but actually I'm just going to have you make one more choice. Do you want the good ending, the neutral ending, or the bad ending? And you just pick one of those and that's what you get. What if what if this also had that? Do you want to do
I
your
remember that.
duty to your people? Do you want to commit yourself to your love for Aiko? Or do you want to get your bloody revenge? And those are your choices. I don't think we've had any choices up
Well,
until
it's
now
the
in this
same three
game, by the
choices. It's the
way.
same choice 3 times.
Yeah.
You have one other. You get to make it earlier. Affects nothing, regardless.
Well, the
of what
fourth
you
choice is winning the earlier battle so that the game's better.
Yeah. Right, I forgot about that.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, win the
Damn, if
duel.
only I had thought of
yeah,
that.
the superior
2
choice
hours
is getting
earlier.
good earlier on so that you have a better game. But if you failing that, you play more of this, and then you get to pick one of these 3 options, and it doesn't do anything until you get to the final boss. You get a different ending depending on which of those you pick. And we didn't say, but the ghost child is yourself as a child.
Oh yeah. Is it
Well,
important? It's
You also
certainly
fight
a thing that
yourself Dark
happens.
Link style. Which, I mean,
Oh,
obviously you were
right.
going to at some point.
look, it's because
Obviously.
you don't have balance, and then you kick the crap out of yourself until it's balanced. But yeah,
I guess I've balanced
That is
out.
what
Yeah.
balances
the options
me.
are like Aiko's ghost is there, you can pick her. Your sensei's ghost is there, you can pick him if you want to pick duty, or you can kill your child self so that you are the rawest MFer around. And that is the third option. And then you go back, you're back in your village, you come back to life, you're killing dudes again, killing your way. Yep. Turns out you were okay enough.
Still
And
on
then you
fire.
fight Kaguro again, depending on which thing you picked. You get one of 3 endings. Pete, do you want to describe which one did you felt resonated the most?
Sure. I mean, they were all pretty straightforward. So I picked the love ending because this game is very obviously a story about a man going through the underworld to save his beloved, right? Like that template's weirdly popular across a whole bunch of like world cultures. Like you have Orpheus, I think Odysseus does it. You have the ancient Japanese legend that this game itself is based on. Like it's like a weird trope. I guess insofar as like what's the like best ultimate thing? They do it in the Disney Hercules movie. Like what's the ultimate thing you could do for your beloved? I guess is fight your way through hell for them.
To an extent, it makes sense that it is convergent evolution. People die. They always die. Your loved ones always die.
Yeah.
That is part of being human. So a bunch of cultures having different stories based around this inevitable fact of life makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does. Going to get them.
You got to go get them.
You got to. But yeah, I picked that one. It basically ends with you returning to Yomi to be with Aiko.
Yeah, not exactly going
Well,
back.
fair enough.
I mean, technically, yes. You kill your bitter rival, and then you just sit down and the building collapses on you. And then you are a ghost in Yomi.
You
Which,
got to get to Yomi somehow.
yeah. I mean, that's the most expedient way. It seemed like a lot of trouble the last time you went down there, so I get it.
Yeah.
I would also want to skip all that part of the game by just sitting down and getting killed.
Yeah, so that's one option. The duty option, you kill the guy and then you're like, I'm a samurai, I always will be, and then you samurai around, I guess.
You train the next generation.
And then if you were the rawest MFer around, you kill that guy and then you take his armor and you lead the bandits.
Yeah, you become him. It's like that was a hard left turn.
Yeah,
You get to keep the nose though. You get to keep your nose.
that one's kind of hilarious.
And no one questions it. You're like, I'm Kaguro
No.
now. And they're like, sure.
You're like, yeah, you kill Riddick. Like,
Okay.
do your thing, baby.
I found none of the endings especially satisfying. I guess the most satisfying one is if you win, and then Hiroki just kind of
Chapter
has
3,
to,
the early one.
accept that he failed the love of his life, and he has to live with that instead of these 3 endings. But yeah, any other closing thoughts on Trek to Yomi?
I do think we barely mentioned them except when I wanted to shout them out earlier. I do think the menu animations are arguably the best part of the entire game. I would just watch
They are good.
those.
They are good. Soundtrack is good. You know,
Voice acting's good. Aesthetics are
Voice
good.
acting's
It's really
very good.
gameplay. It's like the biggest issue.
Yeah.
This is a game to watch someone play.
Yep.
Honestly.
Yeah. The problem with this
But
game
like
is
only like the first hour and a half.
yeah, it's 80% combat. So if you care about doing combat, this one's for you. If you just want the aesthetics, watch it on YouTube.
Yeah, or
But-
watch Seven Samurai.
Yeah.
Just do that.
Yeah, you could watch Seven Samurai. You could play Ghost of Tsushima on the Kurosawa mode. You could play Bushido Blade. You could do a lot of things.
You could live.
You
the
can
life of
train
Bushido
in the
yourself.
blade while
Yeah.
other people are walking around enjoying their lives. You can study the blade. Don't do that.
Go to your local convention, get a samurai sword that they sell there, and then just do that and don't play this
Just
game.
live it.
Yeah.
Just live it.
I don't think this is a terrible game, I'll say.
Oh no, it's
No.
not a terrible game. I just
No.
my issue with it. I shouldn't even say issue with it. I found this game's aesthetic and its early pitches very compelling. I wanted to love this game.
Yes.
The more I played of it, the more I realized, oh, this is a pretty standard action game with this aesthetic. I can see like a number of different tweaks where I love this
Yep.
game. And unfortunately, we ended up in a version where I merely like it. You know, I would recommend someone watch it. I would recommend someone check it out if they're very into the aesthetic. I don't think I would recommend this game to an action game fan just as like
No.
best in class action, you
Yep.
know?
No.
Like a game like Signalis or something, I would recommend that as like a great game to play, even if you are not down for the story in any way. Like if you're just like a Resident Evil person, I'd be like, play this. This is the one you want. This game, I have a hard time pitching it without someone having a very specific niche that they're looking to play or looking to
It's a good comparison.
touch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so unfortunately not best in class for the genre.
No.
That's why I think if it had just ducked itself into a different genre or like had been just different enough that the genre clashes weren't so obvious, it probably could have gotten by. But alas, that is not the game we got. Which now means, Em, it is your turn to pick.
All right, it's my turn to pick, and I have already told you what I wanted to pick.
You should pick it. I don't remember what it was because I have the brain of a goldfish.
I also
I honestly
forgot what the
don't.
name. Hold on, I have it installed. We are gonna play the Annapurna Interactive, rest in peace game, Thirsty Suitors.
Thirsty Suitor.
Yes.
I assume it's a game about some sort of haberdashery.
Yeah, you're making
Yeah.
suits. Yeah,
Yeah.
but you're
Could be.
so thirsty. It's very
Yeah.
warm when you're in a haberdashery, so you're collecting water.
A stylish, story-driven adventure that unfolds through turn-based battles, skateboarding, and cooking. Help Jala confront her mistakes, make up with her exes, reconcile cultural differences, and become the person she was meant to be. Easy, right? I guess we'll find out.
Sounds like it.
Now I want root beer tapper, but it's a bunch of people who make suits, and you're just providing them refreshment.
Add that to the list of games we're gonna make.
Yeah.
Write that down.
So Thirsty Suitors coming up next. Thank you, Pete.
Yeah. As we said, a game maybe a little bit less than the sum of its parts, but still very interesting in a lot of places.
Yep. Thank you, M.
Thank you. Play Samurai on Final Fantasy XIV.
Don't do that. Live the blade.
Or Live the Blade.
Max that card out. Max that credit card out, and then wander off into the woods and cut down saplings until you are strong. Shake a tree and then cut down the leaves as they fall. I think that's how you want to live your life. Well, and thank you, listeners. Reminder, you can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We have our comment sections and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. And please support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens. Until next time, peace.